What's up, everybody? This is Caesar coming straight from the underground where we're innovating. And why are we innovating? Because we're closest to the problem and stand to benefit significantly from obtaining a solution to that problem. And what's our problem? Trying to validate business models in resource constrained environments so that way we can think smarter, think better, and think like an underground innovator. And today, boy, I got a good one for you. In the last video, we were just outlining one of the most important key concepts when it comes to product development, product management, and startups as well, is really understanding that concept, that key concept of the product lifecycle. Well, today we're going to elaborate on that and take it one step further and elaborate a little bit more on how you can strategize when it comes to your technical management, specifically when it comes to testing. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So, in the previous video, I went ahead and talked about the product life cycle and really defining these different phases, specifically the inception, growth, maturity, and decline phases. Now, what's important about those? Well, if you're trying to apply a strategy of innovation or any technical management, it's important to know where your product is during these life cycles. Now, I've already went ahead and created this chart, really superimposing those specific phases onto a testing cycle or testing over time and the risk of testing as it goes through that product life cycle. Now, testing is a very important concept because after you build anything, you really have to have these quality checks in place in order to make sure that you're shipping either high quality code or in the case of, let's say, a medical product, that it meets certain regulations so that whenever you do take it to market, that you know that it's not only going to deliver on what it does, but it's not going to have any issues or any negative impacts when it comes to customer acceptance. Now, testing is one of those phases of the development cycle, and I went ahead and laid it out here for you. As you can see on the chart, here we have a few different lines. On the y-axis, we have risk. Now, risk is extremely high during that inception point. Whenever you're bringing something to market for the first time, whenever you're building out the MVP in this early stage, there is a high probability of leaking the bugs into production, especially if you don't have a robust testing process in place. Now, as time goes on, as you can see in the x-axis, the percentage of bugs should decline. And once you reach this growth phase in your product lifecycle, you should reach some sort of stability within your product. You should start seeing the same expected results every time you version up. And then over time, like I mentioned, once that product reaches that maturity level, it will decline, and essentially the need for testing effort also declines as you sunset that product because there's minor version ups. Here in this inception phase, you're really trying to find that product market fit, so you're versioning up relatively quickly. You're using an agile method of development and really shipping product as quickly as you can. And like I mentioned, if you don't have that robust testing process in place, it's very easy to leak bugs into production and then have some sort of service interruption, especially if it's a critical piece of software that you're delivering. Now, there's a few different things here when it comes to this chart as well. There's a negative ROI space with your testing efforts. Essentially, on the left hand side, over time, you're going to have those negative ROI efforts, essentially because you're spending so much money in setting up your high manual testing efforts, your functional testing efforts, and you're spending more time essentially on testing in this area. As time goes on, as the product grows and matures, you have a really good understanding of the expectations of the product's performance. And during that time, you can start implementing things like automated testing or some form of regression testing. So that way you know what to expect. And your efforts when it comes to high manual testing decreases. And that's where you get a positive ROI. And there's this break even point whenever it comes to costs of testing over time. Now, I mentioned here in this break even point, that's where You're going to be focused more on very pointed exploratory, destructive, and manual testing where you can put those resources in there and you can put your QA efforts into that space to be able to suss out bugs, or you can start automating the tests or the test plans that you've developed in your previous phases. Now, this is really important for startups to understand. Like I mentioned, whenever you do start building a new product, let's say your MVP, there's a high risk associated with shipping that, especially if you don't have any quality checks, especially if your particular piece of software is very complicated. It has a lot of integrations, it has a lot of third party integrations, it has a lot of complex features, and there's a robust feature set. If you're really moving fast, there is a chance that things will break and these things will leak into production. Now, this is a really good frame of thinking because it allows you to be able to strategize in the future term where, let's say, you're short staffed or you're short on your testing resources. Well, now at some point, you know where to stack them. For example, if you have two products, one is a little bit more mature in the life cycle. You know that these can be automated, these tests can be automated. They're not necessarily reaching so many updates. And then there's this potentiality of it being sunsetted in the long term. Well, now you can take those QA efforts and focus them more on those products that are going to be shipped, those new innovations, and really stacking your resources on that particular aspect, and helps you manage your specific resources whenever it comes to product development. Now, on the next video, I'm really going to superimpose that product life cycle on it so that way we can really formulate that idea. We've already discussed that product life cycle, why it's important, where you can start picking up and managing it, where these specific management tactics and strategies apply to these different phases, and specifically here, where these specific risks are highest in that particular product life cycle. So let me know what you guys think. Is this something that you guys have really used when it comes to allocating resources and within your product development, especially if you're a first time entrepreneur or a startup? Is this something that you've thought about in the past? If not, let me know in the comments if this is helpful. Also, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.